Welcome to another episode of the Bark Brigade podcast by Dogazilla Magazine. Today we will talk about an important topic and offer you a guide to help all families that owns a dog or other pet. So I want you to just imagine for just a second that you are standing right in the middle of a Siberian winter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's negative 40 degrees outside.
Yeah.
The wind is just howling, the snow is blinding, and the air is so unimaginably cold that if you were to, drool, your saliva would instantly freeze into solid ice.
That sounds absolutely miserable.
Right. Surviving in that environment does not just require endurance, it requires a complete physiological masterpiece. And for the Samoyed dog, surviving that brutal cold did not require, building a fire. It required, of all things, a smile.
A smile. Yeah, it's wild to think about.
It totally is. That is exactly the kind of mind-bending reality we are getting into today. We are taking a deep dive into an absolute mountain of research, specifically focusing on this really comprehensive text called Cloud-Like Companions, the science and care of fluffy dogs.
Such a great source.
It really is.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to look way beyond the cute Instagram posts and truly understand the science, the history, and, frankly, the intense daily reality of living with the world's fluffiest dog.
Yeah, the daily reality is a big one.
Huge. So if you have one of these living clouds hogging your sofa right now, or, if you are dreaming of bringing one home, we are going to explore the genetic code that built them, the climates that forged them, and what it actually takes to maintain that unbelievable coat.
It is such a rich subject because as we dig into this, you really start to realize that these fluffy coats are so much more than just an aesthetic preference.
Yeah, they're not just about looking cute.
Exactly. We are talking about a deeply ingrained biological blueprint. When we pull back the curtain on this, we are looking at real-time genetic evolution, historical survival in some of the most unforgiving climates on Earth, and a modern economic boom that is entirely centered around dog hair.
Dog hair.
Yeah.
I like that.
It is. Once you understand the underlying mechanics of why a dog is so fluffy, it completely shifts your perspective. You stop seeing just a cute pet, and you start seeing a literal marvel of evolutionary engineering.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the foundational level. Let's look at the actual blueprint of fluff. Because I think there is a common misconception that fluffy dogs just, sort of happened.
Yeah, like it was an accident.
Right, like it is just a random roll of the genetic dice. But it is not random at all, is it?
Mm-hmm.
There is a very specific, highly mapped genetic recipe for creating these coats.
Very specific.
The data isolates 3 specific genes that control this entire spectrum, right?
That is right. Geneticists have mapped the domestic dog genome with incredible precision now, and it turns out that almost the entirety of coat variation comes down to just 3 main genetic switches.
Just 3.
Just 3. The first, and arguably the most important for our discussion today, is the FGF5 gene.
FGF5. Got it.
Yeah, you can think of this as the master switch for long hair. It is a gene that regulates the hair follicle's growth cycle in almost all mammals. So when this specific gene mutates in dogs, it essentially extends the growth phase of the hair.
Oh, I see.
Instead of the hair falling out when it reaches, say, a couple of inches, it just keeps growing, giving you that long, incredibly thick coat.
Wait, so when we see a massive sweeping coat on a dog, we're actually looking at a genetic mutation that just tells the hair follicle to forget its normal stop sign.
Essentially, yes, that's exactly it. It delays the signal that tells the hair to stop growing and fall out. That is FGF5. The second key player is the RSPO2 gene. Breeders and geneticists refer to the result of this gene as furnishings.
Furnishings, like a couch or a rug.
Kind of. It's a funny term, but it refers to the extra facial hair.
Oh, okay.
If you picture a schnauzer with those very distinct bushy eyebrows and that long, distinguished mustache whorl.
Oh, yeah, the grumpy old man look.
Exactly, the old man look. You are looking directly at the expression of the RSPO2 gene. It alters the growth pattern specifically around the face and the lower legs. And finally, you have the KRT71 gene.
KRT71.
Right. This is the curl controller. KRT71 alters the actual structural protein of the keratin, causing the hair shaft to grow asymmetrically.
Which makes it curl.
Exactly. It forces it to bend and curl. That is the gene responsible for the tight, dense curls of a poodle or the wavy texture of a Portuguese water dog.
I love thinking about this like a massive mixing board in a music studio. You are the breeder or nature is the producer, and you are sitting there sliding these faders up and down.
That is a great way to visualize it.
Right, because if you push the FGF5 slider all the way up for maximum length, but you leave that KRT71 curl slider at 0, boom, you get a Samoyed. You get this long, straight, incredibly thick double coat.
Perfectly straight, yeah.
But if you take that same FGF5 slider for length and you also crank up the KRT71 slider for curl, you get a completely different instrument. You get something like a Bichon Frise.
Which is basically a cloud.
Literally a cotton ball. It has that long, curly, single coat. The physical variations are practically infinite, but they all route back to those same 3 sliders on the genetic mixing board.
That mixing board analogy is spot on, and it perfectly illustrates the next major point from the deep dive, which is that humans are actively sitting at that mixing board today, completely remixing the tracks.
Oh, yeah. We really are.
We have recent data that proves this in real time. There is a fascinating peer-reviewed study from 2025 that focused entirely on the genetic drift in Akita dogs.
Oh, this study completely blew my mind. When I was looking at the methodology, I couldn't believe what they managed to track. Walk us through what happened when they compared modern Akitas to the ones from the 1970s.
Right, so the researchers managed to sequence the genetic makeup of modern Akitas and cross-reference it with preserved genetic samples from Akitas that lived 50 years ago, back in the 1970s.
Which really isn't that long ago in evolutionary terms.
It's a blink of an eye. The Akita is historically a working breed from Japan, known for a dense but relatively moderate coat. But the study found that modern Akitas carry that fluffy FGF5 mutation at a vastly higher frequency than the dogs from the 70s did.
Meaning the breed is fundamentally transformed at a molecular level in just half a century.
Yes, exactly. This is not natural selection. It is direct, undeniable evidence of human preference driving evolution.
Oh.
Breeders observed a shift in the market. People wanted dogs that looked like giant teddy bears. They wanted that short and fluffy aesthetic. So breeders actively selected the dogs that happened to carry that FGF5 mutation and bred them together.
So they just kept doubling down on the fluff.
Yes. By chasing that aesthetic demand, they completely rewired the genetic trajectory of the entire breed in just a few decades. The public types fluffiest dogs into a search engine, the breeders respond, and the actual DNA of the animal changes.
Okay, let's unpack this because this raises a massive red flag for me.
Yeah.
If we have the power to just isolate that FGF5 gene and crank the fluff slider to 11, is there a limit? Like, can we take this genetic mixing board too far and actually hurt the dog in the process?
We absolutely can, and unfortunately, we currently are. This brings us to one of the most highly controversial and concerning trends in the veterinary world right now.
I think I know where you're going with this.
The rise of the fluffy French bulldog.
Right. If you have been on social media in the last year, you have seen these. They look almost unreal, like little fuzzy gremlins.
They really do, and their appearance is entirely due to breeders intentionally introducing that exact long-haired FGF5 mutation we just discussed into the French bulldog gene pool.
Just for the aesthetic.
Purely for the aesthetic. Now, the official breed standard for the Frenchie demands a short, smooth coat, so this fluffy variation completely violates those standards. But, the breed standard is just an arbitrary human rule. The actual terrifying problem is the severe health implications this creates for the animal.
Because French bulldogs are already dealt a really tough biological hand to begin with, right?
Precisely. Frenchies are what we call brachycephalic dogs. That means they have those flattened faces, shortened snouts, and compressed airways.
Which sounds miserable.
It is. Because of this anatomy, they notoriously struggle with severe breathing problems. And here's the crucial connection. Dogs do not sweat like humans do.
Right, they pant.
Exactly. They regulate their body temperature primarily by panting. A brachycephalic dog already cannot pant efficiently, meaning they are incredibly prone to overheating.
So you are taking a dog that already has a compromised cooling system, a dog that literally struggles to breathe on a hot day, and you're genetically strapping a permanent heavy winter coat onto it.
It is a physiological disaster. You are sacrificing the dog's fundamental well-being, its ability to just exist comfortably for a designer gimmick that gets likes on an app.
That's awful.
It really is the dark side of that genetic mixing board.
That is so deeply unfair to the dog. It really highlights how important it is for you, the listener, to approach this with your eyes wide open. If you are determined to bring a fluffy dog into your life, it is vital to choose a breed where that fluff is a natural, historically healthy trait that actually serves a biological purpose.
Exactly, not a social media experiment.
Right, rather than supporting an experiment that forces an animal to suffer.
That is a brilliant point to pivot on, actually. Because while modern humans are manipulating these genes for aesthetics, the original fluffy coats were not designed in a vacuum. Nature was the original breeder, and it used geography and brutal freezing climates as its mixing board.
Let's transition into that history, because the environment literally built these animals from the ground up. If we look at the true Arctic survivors, the Samoyed has to be the ultimate example of this natural engineering.
It really is. The Samoyed originates from the Siberian tundra, which is arguably one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on the planet.
Just ice and wind.
Yeah. These dogs were bred over thousands of years by the nomadic Samoyedic peoples to pull sleds across the ice, herd reindeer, and even sleep on top of their owners at night to keep them from freezing to death.
Wow, literally serving as living blankets.
Exactly. Their coat is an absolute marvel of thermal dynamics. It is a massive double coat specifically designed to insulate the dog's core temperature against weather that routinely drops to -40 degrees.
-40. It's hard to even conceptualize that level of cold.
Yeah.
And going back to what I mentioned at the very beginning, the famous Sammy smile.
Yes, the smile.
I always just assumed they were bred to look happy, or that it was just a cute quirk. But the research explicitly points out that this smile is an evolutionary survival tool.
It is, yeah. The anatomy of their mouth is fascinating. The corners of their lips naturally curve sharply upward. This didn't evolve to make them look friendly. It evolved to prevent them from drooling.
Because of the cold.
Right. In -40-degree weather, the physical properties of water are lethal. If a dog drools, that moisture will freeze the second it hits the air. Their mouth would literally freeze shut and they would die.
That is terrifying.
It is. The smile pulls the lips tight, sealing the mouth and preventing the formation of icicles on their face. It is a beautiful aesthetic trait born entirely out of geographic life or death necessity.
It blows my mind. The dog is literally smiling to survive. And then, if you travel away from the frozen flatlands of Siberia and move up into the extreme altitudes of the Himalayas, you find another incredible survivor, the Tibetan Mastiff.
Oh, the Tibetan Mastiff is the undisputed mountain king.
They are massive.
Huge. Their coat is universally recognized as one of the thickest and most impenetrable in the canine world. They possess this massive, dense, lion-like mane around their neck and shoulders.
But they weren't sled dogs, right?
No, unlike the Samoyed, which was a sled dog and a herder, the Tibetan Mastiff was bred to be a stationary, imposing guardian. Their job was to protect flocks of sheep and nomadic monasteries from severe predators.
Like wolves.
Wolves, snow leopards, bears.
Bears. And that coat acts like physical armor, right?
Yeah.
It is not just about staying warm.
Exactly. If a wolf tries to bite the neck of a Tibetan Mastiff, it is going to get a mouthful of dense, coarse hair before it ever reaches the skin. The coat is both thermal insulation and battle armor.
That's incredible.
It really is. Because of that incredible fur, a Tibetan Mastiff can calmly sleep outside, entirely buried under a snowdrift in the middle of a roaring Himalayan snowstorm, and remain perfectly warm.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me. I love looking at how these extreme environments created not just physical traits, but entirely different temperaments.
Temperament is huge.
Yeah, because you have these massive, thick coats, but the dogs wearing them can be psychological opposites. Let's contrast two incredibly fluffy breeds that share these long-haired genetic traits, but have completely wildly different personalities, the Newfoundland and the Pomeranian.
It is a study in extremes, for sure. Let's look at the Newfoundland first. This is widely considered the ultimate gentle giant of the dog world. They are massive, heavily boned dogs with a profoundly thick, water-resistant double coat.
And their historical purpose is so incredibly noble. They were essentially built to be canine lifeguards, rescuing drowning people from the freezing waters of the North Atlantic.
That is their origin, yeah. Their coat is fascinating because it naturally secretes oils that repel moisture, allowing them to swim in icy, freezing conditions without the cold water penetrating to their skin.
Wow, like a built-in wetsuit.
Exactly like a wetsuit. They even have webbed feet to act like flippers.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But what truly stands out is the temperament that was bred into them alongside that coat. To rescue a panicking, drowning human, a dog cannot be aggressive or hyperactive. They must be incredibly gentle, intuitive, and calm.
Right, you don't want a dog panicking while it's trying to save you.
Exactly. Newfoundlands are famously referred to as nanny dogs because they possess this boundless patience, especially with children. They are calm, loving, massive creatures whose instinct is to pull you to safety.
And then, on the exact opposite end of the behavioral spectrum, wrapped in a very similar type of fluff. You have the Pomeranian.
Oh, the Pomeranian.
It's just this tiny vibrating ball of immense energy.
Right. And the historical context here is key. A lot of people don't know this, but Pomeranians actually descend directly from large Arctic sled dogs, similar to the Samoyed or the Malamute.
Wait, really? You take this giant, stoic working sled dog, and breeders over generations just selectively shrunk them down, but they managed to keep the magnificent, enormous fur coat and that classic plume tail that arches over their back like a fan.
That's exactly what happened. They kept the aesthetic architecture, but the temperament went in a completely different direction.
Completely.
The Pomeranian is smart, sassy, and incredibly brave. They are a toy breed, weighing maybe 4 to 7 pounds, but they possess the ego and the personality of a much larger dog.
It is that classic Napoleon complex.
Oh, 100%. A tiny Pomeranian will fearlessly bark at a Great Dane or a delivery driver without a single second of hesitation.
It is just incredible to sit back and observe that the exact same genetic fluff mechanism, that FGF5 mutation we talked about, exists in a giant, drooling, calm water rescue dog that wants to gently carry a toddler. And it also exists in a tiny purse-sized alarm system that wants to fight a dog 10 times its size.
Human selection took that one genetic trait and applied it to wildly different behavioral canvases.
That's a good way to put it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why understanding a dog's historical purpose and their natural wired temperament is absolutely crucial for you before you even think about bringing one into your modern home.
Yeah, you can't just pick based on looks.
You really can't. You cannot just look at a photo online and pick a dog based on how fluffy it is. You have to match the dog's internal wiring to your external lifestyle.
Let's get deeply into that practical application, because I know there are people listening right now who might be preparing to get their very first dog. They know they want that fluffy aesthetic, but they do not have the experience to handle a complex working breed. What does the data suggest are the absolute best fluffy breeds for a beginner?
The research consistently highlights 2 specific breeds as the gold standard for first-time owners who want that fluffy look without the overwhelming behavioral challenges: the Bichon Frise and the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Okay, let's break down exactly why, starting with the Bichon.
The Bichon Frise is practically universally recommended because of their exceptionally cheerful, adaptable nature. They are naturally friendly, they socialize well with strangers and other animals, and they are eager to learn.
They just seem happy all the time.
They really are. But from a purely practical maintenance standpoint, they possess a curly single coat. This is crucial.
Why is a single coat better for beginners?
Because unlike a husky that sheds clouds of fur everywhere, the Bichon's hair grows continuously, very much like human hair. This means they shed very little, which makes them a premier choice for people who suffer from mild pet allergies.
Oh, that makes sense.
You get the look of a fluffy white cloud with a dog that is eager to please and will not leave a layer of fur on your black pants.
And the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
The Cavalier offers a gorgeous, silky, medium-length, fluffy coat, but their primary selling point is their true lapdog temperament. They were historically bred to be companions to British royalty, literally serving as foot warmers in drafty castles.
Foot warmers, I love that.
Right. They are incredibly gentle, affectionate, and deeply attuned to their owner's emotions. Plus, their silky coat, while it does require brushing, demands far less intensive daily maintenance than the massive, woolly double coats of the giant breeds.
So both the Bichon and the Cavalier offer the fluffy aesthetic without imposing an overwhelming behavioral or grooming burden on a novice owner.
Exactly. They are fantastic starters.
So those are the clear green flags. What about the red flags? What are the fluffy breeds that a first-time owner should actively, intentionally avoid?
If you are a beginner, you must avoid the high-maintenance, fiercely independent guardian and working breeds. The Chow Chow is the perfect cautionary tale here.
Oh, they are so pretty, though.
Aesthetically, they are stunning. They have an incredibly dense, woolly double coat that forms an actual lion's mane around their head, and they are famous for having a unique blue-black tongue.
Right.
But the Chow Chow is an ancient Chinese breed with a deeply ingrained guardian instinct. They are notoriously independent, highly aloof with strangers, and can be remarkably stubborn.
So they aren't going to just play fetch with anyone at the park?
Definitely not. They bond fiercely with their immediate family, but they are not golden retrievers. They do not beg for your attention, and they require a very firm, experienced, and consistent hand in training to prevent them from becoming overly territorial.
And I imagine the Tibetan Mastiff falls right into that same category.
Absolutely. The Tibetan Mastiff is strong-willed, highly intelligent, fiercely independent, and incredibly protective of its property. They are a magnificent breed, but matching that intense guardian temperament with an owner who has never trained a dog before is a recipe for absolute disaster.
That makes total sense. Lifestyle is not just about your experience level, though. It is also heavily dictated by where you live.
Oh, for sure. Space is a huge factor.
What if you live in a 600-square-foot apartment in the city? Can you still ethically have a fluffy dog?
Yes, you can successfully balance a fluffy pet's needs with apartment living, provided you are brutally honest about the dog's energy requirements.
Right, honest with yourself.
Exactly. Obviously, the tiny breeds we just discussed, like Pomeranians, Bichons, and Cavaliers, thrive in apartments. Their physical footprint is small, and their exercise needs can often be met with indoor play and a couple of moderate walks a day.
But it is not strictly limited to the toy breeds.
Right.
I was looking at the notes on medium-sized dogs, and there is one that actually adapts really well to small spaces.
You are thinking of the Quichond.
Yes, the Quichond.
They are an absolutely stunning medium-sized dog with a massive ruff of silver, gray, and cream fluff. And they have these distinct, dark, spectacle markings around their eyes that make them look like they're wearing glasses.
They always look so intelligent.
They are. Historically, they were the 18th century Dutch barge dog. Because they were bred for generations to live on small, cramped river barges, serving as watchdogs and companions, they have a genetic predisposition to adapt very well to smaller living spaces today.
That is fascinating. So they're used to a floating apartment, basically.
Precisely. However, the non-negotiable caveat is that they still require rigorous daily walks and significant mental stimulation. An apartment is fine as long as they're not locked inside it for 12 hours a day.
But you have to be realistic about the space. There are certain fluffy breeds you explicitly have to rule out if you live in a third-floor walk-up.
You must unequivocally rule out the giants. A Newfoundland physically takes up too much space for a small apartment they need room to move without knocking over your furniture.
Right, a wagging tail could clear off a coffee table in one swoop.
Exactly. And you also have to avoid high-energy herding fluff like the Old English sheepdog. The research wonderfully describes them as a walking shag rug.
That is the perfect description.
They are goofy, lovable, and covered in an explosion of hair, but they possess incredibly strong herding instincts and boundless energy. They need a yard.
What happens if you put one in a small apartment?
If you put a bored, energetic, Old English sheepdog in a small apartment, they will lose their minds. They might start trying to herd your cat, excessively bark at every noise in the hallway, or completely tear up your drywall out of sheer frustration.
Oh, wow, yeah, no drywall tearing, please.
Yeah.
So we have talked about the space, the time, and the temperament. But what does this all mean for someone's wallet?
The economics of fluff.
Right, because when we talk about these specific purebreds, your Samoyeds, your Tibetan Mastiffs, the research notes that a purebred puppy from a reputable breeder can cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
This brings us to a vital point about the ethical and economic choices available to the listener. There is a massive misconception that if you want a dog with a specific, beautiful, fluffy look, you are required to hand over $3,000 to a breeder.
Tell me more about the reality of that, because I think people picture shelters as only having, like, short-haired mixed breeds.
That is simply not true. Right now, mixed breed dogs are actually the single most popular type of dog in America. And because so many of these dogs combine the genetic traits of several different breeds, you frequently find shelter dogs with incredibly lush, unique, fluffy coats.
And economically, it's totally different.
The difference is night and day. Adoption fees typically only run between $50 to $300, and that usually includes their initial vaccinations, microchipping, and spaying or neutering.
And beyond the sheer economics of it, it is fundamentally an ethical choice.
Exactly. When you adopt, you are giving a deserving animal a second chance at life. But crucially, you are actively choosing not to support the darker side of the pet trade.
Like puppy mills.
Yes, high demand for fluffy puppies often fuels puppy mills' commercial breeding facilities that prioritize rapid profit over the health, genetic testing, and humane treatment of the animals.
Heartbreaking.
It is. Furthermore, if your heart is absolutely set on a specific breed, there are dedicated rescue organizations for almost every breed imaginable. You can easily find Samoyed rescues, Pomeranian rescues, and Chow Chow rescues full of dogs waiting for homes.
Whether people are buying expensive purebreds or adopting gorgeous mixed breeds from shelters, it is undeniably clear that the demand for these dogs has created an absolute cultural and economic explosion.
Oh, absolutely.
The fluff economy, for lack of a better term, is real, and it is massive.
It is a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if you trace the root cause of this recent explosion, it is largely being driven by social media and search trends.
Oh, without a doubt. If you spend 5 minutes scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, fluffy dogs absolutely dominate influencer culture.
They really do.
A video of a Samoyed smiling into the camera while getting brushed, or a chow chow looking like a grumpy little lion, can generate millions of views and go viral almost instantly.
Yeah.
It creates this intense feedback loop of desire.
The search data backs up your observation entirely. People are actively, aggressively seeking this aesthetic out. If we look at Rover's 2026 Pet Trend Report, the miniature poodle is seeing a massive surge in popularity, largely because it offers that highly desirable fluffy look but with a non-shedding coat that fits into urban lifestyles.
Right.
And data from the American Kennel Club consistently shows fluffy breeds like golden retrievers and Shetland sheepdogs, the Shelties anchored firmly in the top 20 most popular breeds year after year. The sheer volume of internet searches for fluffiest dogs in the world proves that this aesthetic is no longer just a bonus trait. It is a primary driving factor in consumer decision-making.
But there is a real tangible danger in that social media feedback loop, isn't there?
This raises a profoundly important question, and it requires sharp critical thinking from anyone looking at these viral trends. A perfect 15-second TikTok video is an illusion.
Yeah, it hides a lot.
It completely hides the reality of owning these dogs. It hides the hours of grueling daily grooming required to make that coat look perfect for the camera. It hides the mud they track in, the expense of the tools, and the physical effort required.
Right.
If you adopt a dog purely for the aesthetic, purely because it looks cute online, it almost inevitably leads to a tragic outcome.
Yeah.
An overwhelmed owner and a neglected, matted pet.
Right, because that fluff does not magically maintain itself.
Yeah.
And that harsh reality, the sheer labor of maintenance, has actually birthed a booming economic sector all on its own. The pet grooming market is not just growing, it is exploding.
The numbers are staggering when you look at the projections. The global pet grooming market is projected to jump from $17.09 billion in 2025 to an estimated $24.54 billion by 2030.
Wow. Over $24 billion.
Yes. That represents a compound annual growth rate of 7.5%. And dogs alone account for 45% of this entire market share, driven heavily by the intense bathing, brushing, and trimming required for these thick, double-coated breeds.
Why is it growing so rapidly right now? Like, what changed in the culture?
There are a few key converging factors. The first is what economists call the premiumization of pets. 65% of owners now explicitly consider their pets to be literal family members.
Oh, absolutely. They're part of the family.
They aren't just the family dog that sleeps in the yard anymore. They are part of the household. Because of that emotional shift, owners are willing to spend premium money on their care just as they would for a child.
That makes total sense. What's the second factor?
The second factor is the rapid rise of mobile grooming. Time is the ultimate luxury, and busy owners want the convenience of a customized grooming van pulling directly into their driveway so the dog never has to leave home.
It is so convenient.
And third, the industry experiences massive seasonal peaks. Groomers are booked solid for weeks in the spring when dogs are undergoing their massive shed of their winter coats, and again in December when families are desperate to have their pets looking pristine for holiday cards and family photos.
And I think it's really important to point out that professional groomers are not just, artists making your dog look good for a family portrait. They actually play a vital frontline role in the dog's healthcare.
I am so glad you brought that up. Professional groomers are often the unsung heroes of pet health.
Because they're seeing the dog up close?
Exactly. While they are washing and drying the dog, their hands are constantly moving over every inch of the animal's body. They are checking the condition of the skin, looking deep into the ear canals, and checking the nail beds.
Finding things owners might miss.
Frequently. They frequently spot early signs of melanoma, hidden ticks, or severe ear infections long before an owner might notice them. Furthermore, they have access to commercial-grade equipment.
Like those giant blow dryers.
Yes, the high-velocity dryers. They use powerful, high-velocity dryers that physically blow out the dense, impacted loose undercoat that an owner simply cannot reach or remove with a standard hand brush at home.
Which brings us perfectly to the most practical, hands-on part of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
The masterclass in maintenance. Because even if you take your dog to that professional groomer every month, you cannot outsource all of the work.
No, definitely not.
If you were going to own one of these magnificent dogs, You have to accept that you are becoming part of a daily grooming routine.
It is absolutely non-negotiable. Fluffy dogs do not stay fluffy by accident. Left to their own devices, their coats are massive magnets for dirt, burrs, loose dead hair, and moisture.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something I think a huge percentage of the population gets totally wrong. I always assumed that if you have a massive, thick-coated dog, like a Great Pyrenees, a Husky, or a Samoyed, you are doing them a favor by giving them a short summer haircut. Like, you shave them down to cool them off when it gets to be 90 degrees outside. Why is that actually a terrible, dangerous idea?
It is one of the most common, well-intentioned, but ultimately dangerous misconceptions in the dog world. The golden rule of double-coated dogs revolves around a concept called thermoregulation. You must never, under any circumstances, shave a double-coated dog.
Break down the mechanics of that for me, because it seems completely counterintuitive. Less hair should equal less heat trapping, right?
It seems logical, but a double coat does not function like a heavy wool sweater. It functions much more like the advanced insulation in a Yeti thermos or the dual pane glass in your house.
Oh, interesting.
The coat consists of 2 layers, a soft, dense undercoat and longer, harsher guard hairs on top. In the winter, the undercoat traps the dog's body heat to keep them warm. But in the summer, those long guard hairs reflect the sun's harsh rays, while the undercoat traps a layer of cool air directly against the dog's skin, insulating them from the ambient heat. So when you shave that coat away, you strip away their only defense mechanism. You ruin the dog's natural ability to regulate its own temperature.
So by trying to cool them down, you are actually exposing them to the heat and making them dangerously hotter.
Yes. You expose their sensitive skin directly to UV rays, leading to severe sunburns and heat stroke.
I had no idea dogs could get sunburned like that.
They absolutely can. Furthermore, shaving can permanently destroy the coat's biological ability to grow back properly.
Really? How so?
Because the soft undercoat and the coarse top coat grow at entirely different biological rates. So shaving them down to the same length causes them to violently tangle and mat together as they grow back.
That sounds awful.
It is. This condition is sometimes called coat funk or alopecia X. Worse still, a shaved or improperly maintained thick coat traps environmental moisture directly against the skin without allowing air to circulate, which creates a dark, damp breeding ground for painful hotspots and severe bacterial skin infections.
Okay, so shaving is completely off the table. The only alternative is regular, thorough, manual grooming. Let's build a professional home toolkit for the listener right now. What do they actually need to buy to manage this correctly?
To do this right, you need to invest in 4 primary tools. First, a high-quality slicker brush.
A slicker brush, what makes it special?
This is a wide brush covered in fine, densely packed, angled wire bristles. It is designed specifically to penetrate the top coat and pull out the loose, dead undercoat without scratching the dog's skin.
Okay, got it.
Second, you need a metal greyhound comb. This is a steel comb with wide teeth on one end and narrow teeth on the other. You use this after the slicker brush to dig deep down to the skin and find any hidden tangles.
So the brush is step 1, the comb is step 2.
Exactly. Third, for those heavy shedding seasons, you want a specific de-shedding tool, like a Furminator, which is designed to grab and remove massive amounts of loose hair safely.
Those things are amazing.
They are lifesavers. And fourth, if you have a curly-coated dog like a Bichon or a Poodle, you want to pivot to pin brushes and wide-toothed combs, as a slicker brush can sometimes pull and break the curly hair.
And the shampoo you use matters just as much as the brushes, right? You can't just use whatever's in your shower.
Critically so. You must use dog-safe shampoo, specifically pH balance for canine skin, ideally formulated for double coats.
Because their skin is different from ours.
Very different. Human skin is more acidic than dog skin. If you use harsh human shampoos or even cheap, low-quality dog shampoos, you will chemically strip the vital natural oils from the dog's fur.
Which causes what?
This leaves the hair brittle, prone to breaking, and severely damages the skin's moisture barrier, leading to constant itching and flaking.
Okay, so we have our professional tools. We have the right shampoo. What is the golden schedule? Like, how often should the listener actually be running these tools through their dog's hair?
The baseline, non-negotiable schedule for a fluffy dog is thorough brushing at least every other day.
Every other day.
Yes. You combine that at-home maintenance with professional grooming appointments every 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if you have a dog with continuously growing curly hair, like a Bichon or a Poodle, you need to see that professional groomer every 4 weeks without fail, because that specific hair texture mats incredibly quickly.
What about the specific times of the year when they blow their coat? I have seen those crazy videos online where people are just punning massive cloud-like handfuls of loose fur off their husky or their Malamute.
Oh yeah, that phenomenon happens twice a year for double-coated breeds. They undergo a massive shedding event to prepare for the changing systems. They literally drop their entire undercoat over the course of a few
This
weeks.
sounds like a lot of vacuuming.
It's an unbelievable amount of hair.
Yeah.
During blowing coat season, your schedule changes. Brushing goes from an every other day task to a strict, rigorous daily requirement.
Daily.
Daily. If you skip even 1 or 2 days during this period, the immense volume of loose undercoat will act like Velcro, tangling with the top coat and forming massive solid mats close to the skin.
Let's give the listener an actionable, step-by-step daily guide to prevent that matting. Because matting isn't just messy hair, it is actually a medical issue.
It really is a medical issue. A mat is essentially a dreadlock that tightens over time, constantly pulling on the dog's skin, restricting blood flow, and causing extreme pain and bruising.
That sounds so painful. So how do we prevent it?
To prevent it, here is your daily routine. Step 1, start with the slicker brush. Work through the coat systematically, section by section, starting from the bottom of the dog and working your way up to remove all the loose undercoat.
Okay, bottom to top.
Right. Step 2, follow up immediately with the metal greyhound comb. The comb acts as your lie detector.
I love that phrase, lie detector.
It's true, the brush might make the top look smooth, but the comb will catch the hidden tangles lurking near the skin that the brush missed.
Step 3 is about location, right? You have to target specific physical areas on the dog.
Yes. Step 3 is relentlessly targeting the high-friction areas. These are the physical spots where the dog's daily movement causes the fur to constantly rub against itself.
Where are those spots
So
exactly?
you must pay special, focused attention to the fine hair behind the ears, the hair under the legs and the armpits, and the thick fur around the neck where the collar sits.
Because the collar is always rubbing there.
Exactly. Because of the constant friction, these areas will form tight mats exponentially faster than the flat areas on the dog's back or sides.
And step 4 is maybe the most important part of this whole process, at least for the dog's mental health and your relationship with them.
Step 4 is using heavy positive reinforcement. Grooming should not be a battle. Give them high-value treats, speak to them softly, take breaks if they get stressed, and actively work to make the grooming session a calm, bonding ritual rather than a stressful wrestling match.
Because if it's a wrestling match, you're not going to want to do it every day.
Exactly. And the dog will start to hate the brush. If you keep up with this gentle daily routine, you are quite literally saving the dog from the severe physical pain of having tight mats pull on their skin, and you are keeping that incredible coat functioning exactly as nature intended.
This has been such an incredible journey through the science, the history, and the intense daily reality of living with these dogs. We started by looking at how human preference managed to radically alter the Akita's genetic makeup in just 50 years to make them fluffier. And we ended with the absolute physical necessity of maintaining what we have created.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating, somewhat provocative thought to consider as we wrap up.
I love these. Let's hear it.
We have seen the data. We know that human demand is driving the evolution of these animals faster than ever before. With the absolute explosion of this $24 billion grooming industry and the rapidly increasing desire for apartment-friendly, hyper-fluffy pets, what will the dogs of 2075 look like?
Oh, wow.
Right? 50 years from now, will we eventually use advanced genetic CRISPR tools to intentionally create dogs that possess massive cloud-like fluff, but biologically cannot shed or mat? As our science catches up with our aesthetic desires, the future of the fluffy dog is entirely unwritten.
It is wild to think about. From the freezing life-or-death survival of the Siberian tundra to a high-tech genetic mixing board manipulating the very building blocks of hair, the journey of the fluffy dog is far from over. Thank you for listening, dear Brigadiers, and if you have any questions, visit the source article on Dogazilla magazine at dogazilla.com. That was all for this episode, and until the next time, bye to all listeners of the Bark Brigade podcast.